Today's video is on the success of the tabernacle. And as we go down these verses, we're going to see the different features that led to the successful building of the tabernacle. Let's start in verse 1. Exodus chapter 36, verse 1. And Bezaleel and Holiab and every gifted artisan in whom the Lord has put wisdom and understanding to know how to do all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary shall do according to all as Lord has commanded. Then Moses called Bezaleel and Holiab and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, everyone whose heart was stirred to come and do the work. First thing we see is that Bezaleel and Holiab were gifted from God. Here we see they were given, verse 1, wisdom and understanding to do all the different type of work that was needed for the tabernacle. And again it's repeated, verse 2, Bezaleel and Holiab and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, everyone whose heart was stirred. Here we see that the gifts that God had given Bezaleel and Holiab in a physical sense were to be put to work in the service of God in building the tabernacle. And of course, we know from the New Testament that every Christian has a gift. 1 Peter chapter 4, read about the spiritual gifts. We read about them in other passages as well. But 1 Peter 4, verse 10, says this: as each one has received a special gift, employed in serving one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. Whoever speaks is to do as one who speaks in the utterances of God. Whoever serves is to do so as the one who is serving by the strength which God supplies. That's what we see here in Exodus chapter 36. So in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom belongs the glory and dominion forever and ever. So the first thing we see is that they were gifted by God. The second thing we see in verse 2, in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, everyone whose heart was stirred to come and do the work. Here we see there was a willingness and a joyfulness as they served God and gave to the work of God. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 speaks of the giving of the Macedonians, and we read of the willingness and the joyfulness of their giving. 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verse 1 speaks about the churches of Macedonia and the grace of God which have been given to them. And then we read in verse 2, in great ordeal of affliction, and we read about the abundance of their joy, and the deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their generosity or liberality. And here we see that they willingly gave themselves, as it says in verse 5 of 2 Corinthians chapter 8, they first gave themselves to the Lord and then to us by the will of God. Then verse 3, back to Exodus 36, they received from Moses all the offering which children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of making the sanctuary. So they continued bringing to him freewill offerings every morning. Then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work he was doing, and they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which the Lord has commanded us to do. So Moses gave a commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, let neither man nor woman do any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. And the people were restrained from bringing. Next things we see here is we have in verse 4, we have the generosity of the people, and the key phrase is verse 5, much more than enough for the service of the work. When we come to 2 Corinthians chapter 8, this is what we read. We read the verse, but we talk about an abundance of joy, overflowing in their generosity. And then verse 3, Paul said, I testify that according to their ability, and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord. So they actually gave beyond, just like here, they gave their beyond their means. They gave sacrificially for the work of God. So the first thing we have is gifting from God. The second thing we had was willingness to work. The third thing, of course, was we saw their generosity. And next we see in verse 6, accountability. So Moses gave a commandment, and the coasted people claimed throughout the camp. Here we see that Moses didn't take advantage of the people. He operated in leadership on the basis of accountability. And we know that leadership in the church, in fact, anything in the Christian life, but especially in leadership in church, there needs to be accountability. Hebrews chapter 13, we read this in verse 17, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls as those who will give an account. So we see accountability is crucial in the work of God. Then we break in the end of verse 6, and the people were restrained from bringing, for the material they had was sufficient for all the work to be done, indeed too much. Then verse 8, and all the gifted artisans among them who worked on the tabernacle made 10 curtains woven of fine linen and blue and purple and scarlet, with artistic designs of cherubim. They made them. Here we see that there was a community, all the gifted artisans among them. And if we're going to serve God effectively, we need that community of fellowship, of love, and serving each other. Remember, Paul wrote to the Philippians in chapter 2 and read this, therefore, if there's any encouragement in Christ, if there's any consolation of love, if there's any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and compassion, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, unity in the Spirit, intent on one purpose. Here we see the same idea in these verses, the importance of community. Acts chapter 4, we read this also in the early church. Acts chapter 2, of course, is the start of the early church. But when we come to chapter 4, we read of their serving each other. Acts chapter 4, all the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and of one soul, and not one of them claimed anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were common property to them. Verse 34, there was not a needy person among them, for all who were owners of land or houses would sell them and bring the proceeds of the sales and lay them at the apostles' feet, and they would be distributed to each as any had need. Here we see the importance of community in the early church. And so we see the principles of the success of the tabernacle are the same principles that will lead to success in service for God. Thank you for listening.